contribute to the discussion by discussing economic democracy, but let me first start off by saying a few words about Rosa Luxemburg, so that you get in our work, so that you get a sense of who you are dealing with here, as we are co-hosting officially this great event. Now, next to me, you know, sitting is Rose, and then we have Rosa. And I just want to, I don't want to go into any details, but I think there's some stuff about Rosa Luxemburg that's relevant to today's discussion. You could make the case, for instance, that Rosa Luxemburg in her days, she was murdered in 1919 during the course of the German Revolution, was also sort of, or had also experienced sort of a triple oppression as a member of the Jewish minority in Poland, as a Polish woman in a country that was divided and occupied by Germany and Russia, and then as a woman. And she was also what I think is very important, a radical socialist, but she was at the same time critical of the course of the Soviet Revolution very early on. And her words, I think, proved to be prophetic in terms of the development, but that's not the issue here today. What I think is important is that she, well, her most important book was The Accumulation of Capital, that was making the case that capitalism can only live by commodifying the non-commodified areas. And at the time, she was harshly criticized for that approach. While now, these days, we're actually getting back to that kind of analysis, because almost the whole planet, I just had a side conversation, almost the whole planet has been commodified, and the areas that can be commodified on top of that are actually shrinking. So what does that mean for the future of capitalism? I'm certainly not going to answer that, but I think the analysis is something to say for us. Also, it has to say something for us in terms of that there is no magic bullet that we have. And there's not just a switch that we can push and then things are going to be better. But that every betterment has to be fought for constantly. And all what we achieve, and nobody knows that better than people in Jackson, Mississippi, everything we have achieved, you know, may be taken back. You may win in terms of the city government in this city, but you know, if you lose the election, the other side can start rolling back what you have achieved. But since we don't have a magic bullet, the key to to our approach, I think, should be understanding that we need to start building in the here and now, not something, you know, that may be out there at some point. I don't want. Of course, we need our imagination. Don't want to be mistaken. But we have to start working the here and now and come up with alternative solutions, or as somebody I really admire highly said, with conclusions that conclude. One of the core functions of our office is to identify key trends and movements in North America and the international left, and to help strengthen them by creating bridges as well as spaces and new alliances between groups from different sectors and tendencies, as well as different countries. So we understand ourselves as one of many embodiments of a pluralist left, meaning we don't have a line that we are following. We try to bring people from various ideological backgrounds and social backgrounds and everything together in order to create, well, if you want, a new left, in terms of that we learn to live with the contradictions that we can choose ourselves, including our own differences in terms of ideology. So even though the conversation went great and there was a lot of agreement in many of the sessions, I think if we dug deeper, we would find a lot of differences also. What is important, though, is to be aware that we still are in the same struggle, and that even, David said that in the other breakout group, even if we don't share the same political ideology, we can still be comrades, and we can still work in the same direction. And this is something, I'm not going to bother you for more than 30 seconds, what we on the European left see now a lot, many multi-tendency parties coming up in a number of countries, and they try to work with this pluralism on the left, which is of course difficult, but in our understanding the only way we can go. As also, if we have a liberated society, we will have divisions, and we need to make space for these divisions. Because the freedom is, as Rosa Luxemburg said, always the freedom of those who think different. Otherwise, it's not freedom, right? And that's what. The only thing I want to point out about the European left is tomorrow may be a great day for the European left, because in Greece there are going to be elections, and the coalition of the radical left, better known by its abbreviation Syriza, is called to win the election, and they may actually form the government. Hopefully they don't need a partner, but that may actually pose a serious threat to European austerity policies, and that may be a very exciting moment. It will be very difficult for a Syriza government. I'm not going into that, but if they manage to get elected, that would be a huge step in terms of turning things around. I'll cut short. I prepared so many notes, but of course the conversation here yesterday and today have moved beyond of much of what I prepared. I want to go into one area, and that's economic democracy, because in our understanding, conversations about democracy, both on the left and also in the mainstream, are also often confined to the narrowly political arena. What we think is a big mistake. That's why we're not only talking about expanding democracy, but actually actively working on it. I want to give you an example. As part of our work towards social and ecological justice, we have developed the concept of energy democracy. And we have established a global initiative, Trade Unions for Energy Democracy. I think, I'm not going into the concept, but energy democracy has a lot to do with economic democracy. Because in this context, the goal is to take over production and use of energy and take it out of the hands of the big fossil fuel companies and reclaim it for the people, with workers taking the lead. And it's been a pretty successful project so far. More than 30 unions from across the globe, including big ones like NAMSA or COSATU, as well as a number of Latin American unions, have already joined in the struggle and joined the initiative. I'll give you this example just to show that the struggle for a democracy that's not narrowly confined to the political arena has many aspects to it, including economic democracy, and as part of it also energy democracy. And with initiatives such as this, we want to fight the view that too often confines democracy to the narrow arena. It's no coincidence that also, I think it's very important to keep in mind, many, if not most, transitions of experiments of left governments have failed to recognize, to reorganize the economy along democratic lines, and have instead organized the economy top-down. We, as the international left, have suffered greatly from that failure. And if we don't want the old strategy of top-down state control of the economy, and if we don't want the free market as it stands, it would seem obvious that we must explore the many tools associated with the growing economic democracy movement, obviously including worker cooperatives, but also consumer, producer, and credit cooperatives, mutual aid and self-help organizations, the free software movement, land trusts have been talked about today, and other mechanisms that basically serve to decommodify our surroundings and democratize our relationship to existing and emerging bases of wealth. Decommodify meaning taking it out of the market, organizing it differently, not by market forces or criteria. We must also seek to create these conditions not with our back to the state, but with one eye on how we can best engage that level of democratic will, no matter how flawed it may be. And that's what we admire in what Choklo Lumumba did here in Jackson, and understanding that we must push to ensure that economic democracy is a radically inclusive democracy, other than that phony democracy that we experience all the time. And we need to place racial justice, environmental justice, gender justice at its core and seek to touch all of the members of our communities and society, and not just those best positioned to enjoy it. I'll skip the examples because they have already been mentioned here, most of them over the course of the last day. I put emphasis on this. While there is a long history of radical politics and movements for economic democracy, there's also a history within the movement of initiatives that turn increasingly inward, benefiting a smaller and smaller number of its original participants without seeking to engage questions of justice in society as a whole. And that's certainly a danger we are faced. There's also a long history of capital interests undermining and co-opting movements such as this. And make no mistake, there already is a battle for the future of this rising movement for economic democracy. As usual, corporate interests are circling and would love nothing more than to co-opt the language of economic democracy, empty it of content, and sell it back to us for a profit. Sadly, we are already seeing this happen with ventures such as Airbnb and Uber, which claim to be proponents of the sharing economy. And that's just the start, of what we are going to face. So because of its great potential, in conclusion, to transform 21st century democracy, but also because of the dangers, the real dangers that we are circling, we have brought the focus on a radically inclusive economic democracy that we see present at this meeting. As a small but visible actor in the international left, we at the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation hope that our support and presence here can help supplement and strengthen the initiatives taking place in Jackson and throughout the South. And let me assure you, you're part of a growing movement, one we see throughout the United States, but also across Europe, South America, and Africa, to take the economic future of our community into our own hands. And that's why we urge everyone to stay focused, to stay radical, and to know that you have many friends and comrades in this fight.
We have 5 minutes. Cool. I have an online stopwatch up right in front of me. So I had to click it before I start. Cool. All right. So first off, thank you everybody for being here. Love to the elders. Love to the youth. We appreciate the opportunity to come together and be a family. Just in order of the questions, what is economic democracy? Technically, I don't know because I've never lived in it. I think, if I can imagine it, right, it's, as I understand it, when each of us has some say in our individual and collective economic fate. I think one of the challenges of the term democracy, right, i.e. the people rule, is that makes us, in theory, I think it's supposed to make us responsible for our own fate. And so one of the things I see sort of emerging in these conversations is there's a struggle around, is it external forces or is it internal forces? Do we need to crush the state or do we need to look within? And there's probably both, yeah, right? We probably need to crush the state and look within, right? And, I don't know. I know when I get into fights, I think about how I'm flawed about a person afterwards. But anyway. There you go. Right, right. In terms of why we don't have economic democracy in this country, I mean, I'd say the first answer is the Constitution. It's a property rights document. It is not a human rights document. And even in our defense of it, we are defending land ownership and not humanity. We are eventually going to have to deal with that. Sooner rather than later, to be honest. And that's a really big thing. You say that to people in the Constitution, whoa, it's like asking me to rewrite the Bible. Kind of, a little bit, yeah. We need to rewrite the American Bible. But let's be honest. The American myth is just that. Everyone in this room knows that. The Constitution is the document that holds up the lie. When we defend the Constitution, we defend the lie. If we all acknowledge it's a lie, why defend the document holding up the lie? Just throwing it out there for people. Number 3, who are the forces opposed to economic democracy? I find this question funny, right? because I keep thinking of Oprah, right? I'm serious though. I keep thinking of Oprah, right? Because you know, she just came out recently and she was like, you know, Ferguson needs leadership. And so I get these obsessions, right? I'm a black nerd. I get these obsessions. So I had this one like 6-month obsession about the singularity. Does anyone know what the singularity is? Right, yeah, so just watch for artificial intelligence and robots taking over your life. I'll leave it at that. So Terminator, Matrix, you get my point. But my recent obsession has been Oprah. And one of the reasons, that doesn't sound right. One of the reasons that she's been my obsession, right, is because she's the only black billionaire. In the 400 billionaires we have in the United States of America, she is the only one that is like black. And it's interesting because when you look at you know, you don't want to look at things like this, but sometimes you have to, right? And like 330 of them are white males, right? Between the rest of the ones remaining, there's a couple of Indians, a couple of non-Indian Asians. There are no Native Americans. There's about 40 to 50 women, like half of whom are Waltons. And I'm not exaggerating. That's true. And then there's Oprah, right? Oprah's on that list. She's kicking it. And what's interesting is to think about how she got there, right? Because if you research Oprah and religion, right? One of the things that shows up is that she's basically like a cult, right? She's got like a television program, movies. There's like a magazine. She's on the cover. She's like, "Yo, baller!" And then she wants to tell Ferguson she can't see the leaders, right? I'm like, come up off some of those billions, yo. But I'm just saying, when we look at a person like Oprah saying to us she can't see the leaders in Ferguson, there's an underlying message in that, right? There's another way to say what she's saying. I don't want to see the leaders in Ferguson, right? Now, I'll let you contemplate the implications of that. 4, how can we eradicate oppression, division based on race, nationality, section? So, I'll be honest, I don't think eliminating capitalism automatically eliminates that. It certainly makes eliminating it much more likely, and it eliminates the ability to, okay, look, somebody calls me a word, let's just say the N-word. I can get angry about that, right? I can choose to call them something back, I can choose to tackle them, I can choose to slap them in public, have done that, but I don't have to, right? I can choose something different. If I'm looking for a home and somebody is keeping me from a home, but it's not just somebody, it's an entire structure of real estate. And as a result, I have to live in a particular community. I can't just slap that away, right? I can't just cuss back at that. That is beyond my individual ability to overcome just because, no matter how bootstrappy I am, right? So to a certain extent, what we can eliminate with economic democracy are the economic impacts of those things, at which point we might have to look inside. But moving to number 5, how do we attain ED in the workplaces? I mean, I think unions were pretty fresh. No, I mean, you know, I say that particularly because okay, has anybody ever seen like Target's training videos? I highly recommend checking these out because they literally go after labor unions in their training videos, right? So you're just getting a job at Target, and while you're watching this video, they're like, by the way, if anybody comes into Target trying to unionize, remember, they just want your money. Like, they literally are telling their employees this. So if you're coming to them and you're like, yo, I'm trying to come to you in worker solidarity because I know you're getting low wages, right? It's almost like an abuser. They've already run the education campaign, so it's like, my abuser said that you were an abuser. So I mean, I mean, there's something that hasn't come up, which is, I mean, it came up a couple times, which is the reality of automation, right, and the replacement of human beings with robots, and then globalization, the replacement of human beings in a locality with human beings everywhere. And so it's going to be a little more difficult to get economic democracy in workplaces we do not collectively control, because profit has no reason to be nice to you unless it's profitable. So what are our present campaigns for economic justice? There's a lot of them. We've talked about a few of them. I think folks have covered that. How do we support each other? Okay, so this one. The first thing I want to say here is we listen. Like, we actually really listen. And I want to second that with we stop trying to be right all the time. The American left and the left in general, politics in general, but the American left specifically, has a problem. And that problem is it's a bunch of people trying to be right all the time, right? They want to be right about their ideology. They want to be right about their methods. They want to be right about something because they've spent 30 years being that. And the idea that maybe they spent 30 years defending a particular perspective and it may or may not be useful is hard to let go of. Who wants to have been wrong for 30 years of their life? I feel you. It's not everybody's problem, though. It's not. It's not everybody's problem. And you know what? It's not that big of a deal either. So I have a challenge for everybody. You don't have to take it, but here's my challenge for you. I want everybody within the next 24 hours to make a fool of himself at some point. Purposely. Right? And I want you to be okay with it. And I want you to do it in front of people you know, and I want you to do it in front of complete strangers. Because we spend so much time trying to not look like a fool, we will crush other people's well-being and health just to not look bad. So I think that plays a role in our not having economic democracy, right? The fact that we don't want to look like we're a part of the reason that there's not economic democracy, even if we are. It's interesting, right? One of my guiding ideologies is Miyamoto Musashi. He's a 16th century samurai. Just to put it in perspective, he fought 60 death duels and he died of old age. So he might know something. He might not. I mean, I don't walk around carrying a sword, but some things are applicable. And he's got this thing. It's called the Way of Training. I'm going to end right around here. And I highly recommend this book. It's the Book of Five Rings. People have talked a lot about business and things that people in business do, and this book people in business use a lot. It has a bunch of tenets, and there's one in particular called the Book of Earth. It's the first book, and it's the Way of Training. The first thing he says in the Way of Training is, do not harbor sinister designs. Think honestly and truthfully. Now I want to just say that one more time. Do not harbor sinister designs. Think honestly and truthfully. Now, this is different than the Ten Commandments, which says, thou shalt not lie. What's the difference? One is external, right? Not saying that it's not saying you won't lie to yourself. I'm just saying when we talk about thou shalt not lie, we're usually talking about two other people. This says very specifically, do not think dishonestly. He kind of gave you permission to lie. You can lie if you want to, just don't believe your own lie. Just remember what the truth is in here, right? And this is a real thing, because how far can we get collectively when we're lying to ourselves and then trying to convince others that our lie is the truth? Really? I feel you, bro. I feel you. Just two more things from that list, right? The second is that the way is in training and one must continue to train. So I always have this really interesting situation where I'm in a room or whatever and I find myself taking notes. And usually the reason I find myself taking notes is because of this list. I came across this list when I was 18, and one of the things I learned from it was, at the end of the day, the work dominates the decisions, right? So at the end of the day, I will be up here talking about what our group said because I chose to take notes, which means that I get to define the narrative of my entire group for no reason other than I chose to take notes. How many things in our movement are like that? Come on, man, just take some notes. I'm serious. I'm serious. Two other things. They're one thing, but they're two separate, but they're connected. Cultivate a wide range of interests in the 10 skills and 10 arts, then one can definitively find the benefits of Hayoyo and develop oneself. To be honest, I don't know what Hayoyo is. I'll just be honest about that. Second thing, be knowledgeable in a variety of occupations and learn the thinking of people who work in them. This has been a big part of how I came into both activism and the music industry. I interned at just in terms of my music industry piece, so you know. I interned at an independent record label for about 1.5 years, 2 years. I worked at a radio station. I worked as a PR person. I worked as a street team promotions person. I worked as a show promoter. I've been an artist. I've worked as a producer, and I've worked as an engineer. I'm not that good at all of those things, but I did them to know what they were like, to understand how people who do them do their work, and to know what they were saying when they were talking to me. right? So that you can't just pull a little fast one on me as a DJ. I've been a DJ. I know what you do. I may not have been that good at it. I'm probably the worst scratcher in this room right now. And I'm saying, even those of you who've never scratched before, you might be better than me, right? But I
here in Jackson, in this very, very, very same space next door, thinking about something that should be near and dear to all of your hearts. And that's how we build movement in this country for fundamental social change. And obviously, our discussion of economic democracy is very, very central and core to this question. The other thing I want to put on the table, and I'll come back to the social forum, because if you don't know, if you didn't hear Kali earlier, and others have said this also, I believe Jerome said it this morning, that in June 24th to 28th, in this very space, in this very center, a U.S. Social Forum site, the third 2015, one of those sites will happen here in Jackson. And that's a very, very, very good thing from my perspective. I want to come back to that. But I do want to say something else about Mississippi and Jackson that makes me very humble to be in this space, to be on this panel, to share a very interesting breakout session where, for sure, all of us did not agree. But the land and the space we're in should make us all very, very proud, because it was in this space and land that the very first struggles for justice happened. From the time of the very first white settler efforts in colonization to the more recent efforts around the vote. And we know that SNCC came to Jackson, and we know that people from Mississippi stood up and took a stand. And I have no doubt that in this most turbulent of moments, that will happen again. And this is the very space we will be in, because, or should be in, because of the courage, because of that political history, and because all we owe to those who have come before us. So thank you very much for that. I also want to say, and Vinny drew up on a theme that my comrade mentioned earlier, that we're part of a mighty stream. And when I say that, this struggle for justice didn't begin with Cooperation Jackson, and it won't end with the ability for us to engage in economic democracy and to create it in this country. But it was recognized quite a while ago that the nature of capitalism and the nature of this form of capitalism was deadly to the earth and deadly to human beings. We also understand, for those of us who come out of a 500-year struggle of racism and white supremacy and patriarchy, that those who have come before us understood that the battle would be long. And when I think about the social forum and the way it enters in the stream of struggle, we have to go back to the inception, something called the World Social Forum. I don't know if any of you all have attended those, but at the time that the captains of industry, at the time that those who decide or think they decide our economic destiny were organizing in Davos, Switzerland, in the World Economic Forum. In 2001 in Brazil, those activists, those workers decided that the grassroots of the world should organize and push back. And we entered that stream in a very interesting way, because when the United States or the U.S., because some people don't consider that a legitimate formation, entered into that conversation, it was not the people on the ground, not the people who were most impacted, not the communities of color. But we decided through our organizing effort that our voices should be a part of that World Social Forum process. It took until 2007 that the first U.S. Social Forum happened in this country, in Atlanta, Georgia. And that was in the wake of the fiasco given Katrina and the abandonment of so many people. I know we have Louisiana in the house. And because of their struggle, we brought that struggle to Atlanta at that social forum. And the principles were that those of us who have been most impacted by this system should join together, should organize together, should build together. It's in that stream that we developed and organized the second social forum in this country in 2010 in Atlanta, in Detroit, Michigan. And that should send a powerful message to you, because if capitalism has expressed itself in its meanest and most derogatory form, it's been in Detroit. And that struggle is still going on. So we enter into a mighty stream of struggle. And it's very, very important that we're in this space, that the U.S. Social Forum is coming here in 2015, and that you all will be a part of it. Let me just say something else about this whole process of building assemblies. And this came up in our breakout session. An assembly gives us a vision of what democracy can look like, real democracy. It says that we all have input, that we all have a message, that we all can work together to decide our common destiny. Being in this space means that we've identified the political moment. It's a harsh and ugly political moment. It's a moment in this country of mass incarceration, of vast economic dispossession, of our children not having access to education. And you know the list goes on. You all know that because that's what you have been fighting for. But it's also an understanding about alternatives. And I would say it's also a space and a place for us to exert our political will. And when I think about political will, it's more than saying we're going to join a movement. It's more than saying we're going to organize an assembly. It's also saying that that vision that we have of another world, of an alternative world, we're going to put into action. We're going to put our lives on the line. We're going to say whatever it takes politically, we're going to do that. And I have embraced this notion because there have been so many people have sacrificed through this kind of intense political will. And the actions that we're going to take to build economic democracy, to transform this society and this globe, is going to take the utmost political will. It's going to take, and it's going to mean, our utmost commitment and unity to one another. And I think those are the most powerful and significant principles of the World Social Forum that we hope will be dissipated, assimilated, made a part of all of our lives. I would also want to maybe say one other thing. I'm not going to try to go through all of the questions that were asked, because I think we've had enough of a conversation about those. But one thing that has been on my mind, and that we in the struggle as well as in the social forum struggle with, and that is this issue of care work, gender justice. Sister Rosa Luxemburg, who understood the triple oppression of gender, race, class, who understand that the mighty struggle against economic dispossession is also a struggle against hierarchy and domination and male domination and violence and state violence and all those violences. And that if we're going to have justice, if we're going to have economic justice, we're going to have a world in which all of us do the care work of the world, where all of us embrace the children, where it isn't a co-op that's simply about the women taking on the child care, but it's a reorganization of the way we relate to as human beings, as males, as females, as gender non-conforming, embracing all of our sexual diversities. If that's the kind of value system we're trying to create and must create, that has to be as much a part of economic justice and economic democracy as anything. So I want us to put this care question on the table. It's care for our brothering and our sistering. It's care for our children. It's care for our earth. And that shouldn't be the responsibility of one gender. That's all of our responsibility. Finally, I think I'll end my brief remarks by drawing on one of my muses, if you will, one of the great thinkers of the generation that came just before, and that's the great Sister Audre Lorde. And when she spoke about justice, one of the things she said that I think we should take very, very seriously, that to struggle and to identify oppression and domination is one thing, but the biggest struggle, the deepest struggle, is to identify and to struggle against that seed of the oppressor that is within us. So thank you very much.
All right, so if we can get the facilitators, first of all, give them a round of applause. So if we can get the facilitators and the note takers from each of our 4 groups to come on up. And how we're going to do this again, they're going to share out, and then we're going to have a large group discussion to kind of finish our People's Movement Assembly. Now, for many, this might be the kind of the first experience of the People's Movement Assembly. This was a modified one. Y'all got to recognize. This is a modified one, and beginning kind of an experience, at least for us working together for 2015 and beyond. And the point of a movement assembly is for us to share with each other, reflect with each other, share our best thinking, but to act, and to act in unity with each other. And so we want to get to that point of sharing what all the different 4 groups discussed, came up with, that everybody can hear, and then have a broad conversation about how to move forward. So if we can get everybody to come on up. Ed is here. Yeah. Brandon and Landry is already here. And then, but the note takers, y'all shouldn't hide, y'all. Some of y'all back in the back. Thank you. So come on up. And we're going to go through in order. Group number 1 first. 1, 2, 3, 4. 10 minutes, and let's make it a real 10 minutes. We've been kind of liberal because we let in a lot of time. But I see a lot of folks who look very sleepy, tired, and hungry, so the liberalism is going to end. All right. So 10 minutes is 10 minutes, and I will be keeping time.
So everybody, hello. Hey. So there's something going down. I don't know if I need a mic, but okay. Because I can deal with people.
Online.
All right. So I try not to be the youth chick all the time, but I came out as a youth organizer when I was 14 and 15. So some stuff for me will always be number one. And when there's a whole group of young people across the way that have blocked being in participation, then we can't actually, I can't go forward, just say, okay, yeah, let's just come together and wrap up. Because if there's stuff that happens and people feel like they can't be in space, then that means we're not doing our work right. And we're not being righteous. And I know adultism is a challenge in our work, but we need to deal. And so I want to we got to have some real conversations. Because some people drove here, and there's a whole bunch of them that came and feel unloved and unwelcome. All righty? They're across the hall. They don't want to come on in necessarily. So I know we need to do a wrap up. And we need to come up with something that is some sort of statement around, in our wrap up, what we will do to commit to in this work around economic democracy to actually make sure that young people are loved, cared for, and are essential. Yes, ma'am.
It would help us, I think, for me personally, as an organizer and a revolutionary, it would help me to know what the issues are. If we could just get sort of a summary of what the issues are so we can be in solidarity, I think that would be the most personal way to go forward. That's just
I agree.
Me. I'm just making that as a suggestion.
I agree with that. I agree.
Can you appeal? Maybe I can come over or we go over. I think for them to come over all and play and leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we need
Don't let me. I can
She was going to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, she was the one to talk to us.
We had conversations.
Just go. I mean, even if Casino comes.
I wouldn't know.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure. Okay, so is there a delegation?
We're going to see what happens.
Okay. Because what they said to us in retreat was that they felt in the first round of voting, they didn't get in.
Well, then that's what you say it out loud.
And then in the second part, well, I mean, I'm just saying what they said to us. Ed was facilitating, so they.
So
Yeah. And then in the second part, it was when, they were asked to share.
I would say let's not do a lot of speculation. They can come in, hopefully, and they'll tell it. I didn't. I got my own issues, so I'm kind of. But I remember being a youth.
Yeah.
Because me personally, I thought honestly, when I was a youth organizer, I would pull my folks to the side and we do our own session. That's what I thought. No, I'm saying I didn't. I'm just assuming that's what I would do with my youth. Was give them all the focus and attention that they need, and sometimes that would mean not necessarily engaging a larger group and not being apologetic about that. So I thought that's what they were doing. So I didn't have no contradiction with it. They had something they wanted to talk about. Space is available.
And one of the